Hi, this is Erica, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm in the Worcester area, and her team are amazing at helping their clients get great results. Welcome to the show today, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, today we're going to be talking about something that is very interesting because part of your job is to help your clients follow the rules and get great results and strategize and understand the process. And it helps a lot of people save a lot of money and a lot of stress from just not knowing. But sometimes the process can be stressful because while you and your client are following the rules, or maybe your client doesn't want to follow the rules, but somebody else, might be ignoring them. And so there are consequences. So today we're going to talk about what are the consequences and, the difference between, what the court wants you to do and, what the family and what's actually in contracts and, what happens when you don't follow the rules. So let's start off with talking about what's the difference between a contract and a court order.
Well, contract is going to be something that you, as one of the parties, signs. So you're signing it. Now, obviously, a court order is going to come directly from the court. But can you have a stipulation where you sign the stipulation and becomes part of the court order? Yes. So it could be something that is part of an agreement that you signed, and the court acknowledged it and agreed to all the terms. Or it could be something that is completely outside of the court in its entirety, and it's simply a contract between me and you regarding, you shoveling the snow at my house. It could be something that simple, or it could be something that expansive where it's a lease, and I'm renting it out to you. So it could be a lot of things. Obviously, if you're having a home improvement, that could be a contract. So very different types of contracts that go outside of court, never have the court involvement. And obviously, then there's other component, which is something that's happening in the court, whether it be a stipulation or just a court order signed off by the judge.
So we're here talking about what happens when you don't follow the rules. So what happens in the court when you don't follow a court order?
Well, there's different consequences. It depends on which court you're in. The simple thing is you're going to ask the court in some way to enforce that court order. It might be they violated it and we need to file a contempt. It could be a further hearing on it, and just stating that we need further direction, judge, or they didn't comply with it. What are the ramifications? Or it could be flat out breach of a court order or a contract.
Wow. So are there other areas where they use different methods of enforcing these court orders?
Those I think are the biggest ones that we have. Again, if a court order, it's going to be going back to that particular court that issued the order and saying this needs to be addressed in some fashion. And again, depending on what court you're in, it's going to be depending on what complaint you're filing. But anytime you're going to have a court order, then you're going to be able to go back and say somebody didn't honor this and we need to enforce it.
But what do they do? Like, what do you have to do if you didn't follow the rules? Are you scraping gum off the bottoms of the desks after school? I mean, you're writing out lines 100 times. I will not talk in class. I will get my documents in. I mean, like, what is it that happens?
That's a great question. And the reality is, it all depends on what the court order is that was not followed. So if it is something and I'm just asking for documents, then the court's going to say, you need to give it to us by this day. If you don't give it to us by this day, then you need to maybe be precluded from submitting any documents at trial, precluded from submitting any evidence at trial, including witnesses. Maybe it's just, hey, we're going to give you a little bit of extra time, but you also have to pay the attorney's fees. You could pay sanctions. So if it's a court order regarding documentation or lack thereof, those are the general remedies. If it's, I didn't comply with a court order for child support, then it's okay, we're probably going to have a review date. You're probably going to have to pay attorney's fees. And the other part of that is, depending on how severe it is, maybe you'll be locked up, maybe you'll go to jail, and there'll be a purge amount, which is you need to pay $5,000 if you want to get out of jail because you owe $10,000. Maybe it's, hey, you didn't comply with the court order and you didn't let me see my child for Christmas. Okay, well, the penalty is now you're not going to see your child for the next Christmas, and the other party's going to have them for the next 2 years. So the penalties are going to be based off of what the court order was that wasn't followed. It's obviously going to be distinct and relates somehow to what you did that was incorrect. So we really got to look at that document and figure out what was incorrect at that point in time before we can move forward as to what the consequences of those actions are.
So I know that you handle more than just family cases. What are some of the ramifications and examples that you might be able to share with us on the real estate side?
On the real estate side, depends on what we're looking for. Sometimes it's going to be specific performance. If you're saying, hey, you breached the contract and you won't sell me this property, property is unique. As a buyer, I can order you to sell me the property. So there's certainly high ramifications in that particular case. It really depends on, well, maybe we just said we were going to leave it in broom clean condition and we didn't. Okay, again, those are kind of pick your battles. Maybe you just instead do a holdback because you're going to have to pay $500 for the trash to be picked up. So obviously everything doesn't need to result in going into the court and having the court resolve it. It could be something that we negotiate afterwards because it's not cost effective. And we really just want to get this deal done. So really kind of have to look at, again, what is that breach? What is the severity of that breach? And how can we fix it? How can we make the party whole that did everything right and punish somehow the person that did something wrong?
So is there a difference? Is it worse when it's a family case versus a non-family case? Like when you're not following the rules? I mean, I know that there's some, like if you don't pay your child support, there's a situation where you could actually end up in jail. And I actually got one of those calls from somebody that I hadn't talked to in a long time, but he was calling everyone in his phone. And he was an old manager of mine, and he hadn't paid his child support. And he was literally sitting in jail. And just he had to come up with this X amount of money to get out. And it's very interesting. So is there a difference between the cases that you work with when someone's not following the rules and super extreme punishments versus a slap on the wrist?
Well, I think everything can be super extreme. I think the reality is when you're dealing with any court other than family court, it's all going to be monetary. So can there be penalties behind? Sure. Can we get an award for $30 million? Sure, depending on the case of it. So certainly that's going to be severe to you as the person's going, oh my God, I don't have $30 million, right? I don't have, how am I supposed to pay that? And they're going to go, well, you have 20 years to pay it. Great. So certainly we're talking about high profile cases there, but certainly that's going to hurt you, but it's going to hurt you financially. When we're talking about the family realm, it's going to do more than hurt you financially. You could ultimately lose custody of your kids. Yes, you can go to jail. There are a lot of consequences. You could get supervised parenting time. You could have somebody watching over you while you're touching your kid and going, why are you touching him that way? I'm giving him a hug. You could have that where you're going, I don't want all these eyeballs on me all the time. I think those penalties are much greater because they're emotional. They're things that are directly impacting you, not necessarily impacting your pocketbook. Maybe they are. But at the end of the day, the emotional side of losing your child or not seeing your child every day or being able to see them under limited circumstances, I think is more detrimental to any human than it is out of the financial pocket.
Oh, I would absolutely agree. I mean, if you aren't going to be able to see your kids, or you can't do what you want with them. Maybe you're not even allowed to take them out of the city. There's a lot of things that could happen that really just affect your relationship and how you live your life. And certain things can't be changed. And sometimes you lose your rights, and that can be the worst possible situation. Do you see a lot of that?
Unfortunately, I do. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that, want to do the self-help remedy. Well, she did it to me, I'll get back at her. Don't do it. Come see me instead. Seriously, it's one of those things that is extremely frustrating to me because we want to play the tit for tat game. That never, ever, ever wins in family court. It doesn't. Um, Stop. Just stop even thinking it. Stop doing it. It's so much better off for you to go, look, we're going to document it. We're going to go in front of the judge. We're going to tell the judge this, this, and this. And as a result, we want this. That's a much better plan than I'm going to play that game. She's not going to win. Because guess what? Neither of you are going to win. And the person that's going to lose the most is the child.
Yeah, but sometimes people just don't care. I mean, they break the rules and they care more about getting back at you, or they think that if they do this one thing or they don't give you certain documents that, maybe then they won't have to be judged a certain way. And if you don't have the information, you can't get the result that you want. Haha. But it can be really bad. It's just not listening to boundaries. Like, you might have boundaries for a reason, and people don't listen to them. And then you have to keep bringing it up. I mean, what do you do when there's something in an agreement and and it has to do with parenting time, and the person just picks them up when they're not supposed to pick them up? Or, yeah, they had this vacation, but now they want your vacation time too. Like, what do you like? Is there a quick fix for that? Because obviously, some of these things, the vacation comes and goes, and then you're like, well, that's time you're never going to get back.
I think it's very keen to go back to, nope, this is what the agreement says. I'm not going to do it. You're going to pick up the kid? Nope, it's not during your parenting time. It's about putting your foot down. And once you start enforcing that court order, you start going, I'm going to go back into court to force that in court order, they stop. Because at some point they know, hey, I pushed it too far. And then they have to get in your good graces so that they can try to screw you again. And so there's that dynamic there that really, again, you have to be the strong one and go, no, we negotiated this. I mean, it's all too often I can't tell you about how we're negotiating an hour of time. I mean, this hour of time is going to make or break both of these families, right? And they're spending 2 hours for me to get that hour of time extra a week. Great. I'm happy to take their money. But at the end of the day, I talk to them 6 months later and they go, oh, yeah, we changed all of that. And I go, what? And then I listened to them and they changed it to not even include that extra time. So the time that they were fighting over wasn't important in the long run. And it's not like they're being made up on some other time. And then it makes it very hard for me to go, Judge, this is the schedule we want, the court order that we've already had. And the other party goes, they haven't followed that. So again, talk to your attorney about these things, because what you're doing, if it happens once in a while, sure. But if it becomes the norm, you might be setting yourself up to lose that time permanently because you just don't know and you're being a nice person.
And that's a sneaky trick that you hear about people doing, that they they end up saying, "Oh, I'll help you. Don't you want to go out that night? Why are you?" And then every Friday night, all of a sudden, they go to court and you lose that Friday night because you thought they were being nice. I mean, one of the things you always say is write everything down. The other things I've heard you say is don't talk to your ex. Like, don't do things that are off of what you've already agreed on very often, because you really can lose your kid. I mean, they'll look at it closely, but yeah, it can be devastating.
It absolutely can. And again, say you've never been into court. The first thing they do, and they go, okay, so your kid's 5 years old. So what does the schedule look like? Okay, so you separated when the kid was 3 years old. So for the last 2 years, what does that look like? And if the schedule has been equal parenting time, the court's going to go, okay, why shouldn't we do that? And unless you can say, well, in the last 6 months, I caught him having sex with, somebody in front of the child, and I saw him doing drugs, and I saw him going out drinking and all these other things, the court's going to go back to, well, this is what we've been doing for the last 2 years. Why would we not do that? And so really you have to have a really good reason to change that. So again, it goes back to, even if you don't have a court order, what does that precedent look like? If you do have a court order, what was the court order and what have you actually been doing? And if that differs, the court's going to consider, what have you actually been doing?
So make sure you're doing what you want your future self to be doing. I guess that's the moral of the story, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you think that you're not spending enough time with your kid right now, make sure that you are using that time. I mean, do people ever get in trouble for having the time, but then passing their kid off to everyone? I mean, you hear about these stories with like the parent that doesn't usually have the kid gets the 50-50 and then they pass the kid around. It's or they leave them alone. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on what age the kid is, right?
Yeah, they usually fight for that because they want to, on paper, say that they have joint legal custody and joint physical custody. Why? Because they want a lower child support amount. That's usually what it happens. The problem is, again, well, where is this kid going? Is the kid being passed off to grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and all those other people? Is he getting a babysitter for those times? What's going on? How frequently? And again, your problem is you're looking at it going, well, my daughter told me, and I'm going to go, okay, well, your daughter isn't coming into the picture and isn't testifying. So it puts a burden on you being the one saying, well, this is happening. And I'm going, okay, prove it. Because it's very hard for you to prove. Because even if your child is truthful with you, even if your child has, is telling everything accurate, great, she's not coming into court to testify. So again, it goes back to, well, unless he's admitting it, it's a he said, she said.
I mean, this is all really good information and like I was very lucky to have you to help me through a divorce, and even after the divorce certain issues come up, and honestly, like I would be doing everything wrong if I didn't have you. And the voice of reason comes in because you can't help but get pissed off. I mean, that's just part of family court. People are passionately upset, and they, like you said, they'll take a small thing and they'll spend $100,000 on a few hours. And later on, they may regret that. But at the time, when they're so passionately upset about something that just happened, they need a voice of reason saying, okay, here's the options and here's what they're all going to cost on average for you to figure out. And then you have to hope that the other side is going to be reasonable, and if they're not, then it's going to cost twice as much more. I mean, there are things that could be settled a year or two before, but because of one conversation in court, it just doesn't get settled, and it costs you tens of thousands of dollars more every year. So it can be devastating, and it's emotionally exhausting as well. I mean, I'm sure you see people that just peter out. Finally they're like, fine, I can't do this anymore. This is affecting my whole life.
And that happens more often than not. It's like, really, I've been doing this for 3 years. Like, when's it going to end? And my answer is usually, well, unfortunately, when the child's 23. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I mean, it'd be great if it happens before then, but I can safely tell you that don't plan on it until their 23rd birthday. And then hopefully there's still not arrears, because if there's arrears, then that's going to continue beyond that. But the back and forth, the tug of war, if you will, of I want this parenting time and I want this holiday and I want this vacation time and I want this. Again, it gets emotional because we're talking about children. And I know that, both parents love their children, Um, the question is, do they love the fight more?
Oh, that is true. And some people do love to fight. I'm sure you've seen that as well. Some people love it. Other people run away from any kind of conflict. And when you have one of each of those in a court case, I'm sure it gets very interesting because someone's trying to run all over someone else and the other person's running away, and you're there to help be their protector.
And it's very hard for me when I'm representing the person that wants to run away because I have to play devil's advocate. I'm happy to do what you want me to do, and I'll follow your direction, but let me tell you the consequences of your actions. And I really have to spell it out to them because they don't want the conflict. Nicole, I just can't handle the conflict. I just can't do it. And I get that. But you need to understand that if you walk away, this, and this is happening. And ultimately, we're back at square one. And then there is no court order. Maybe we're dismissing the case because we're just tired. Great. But we didn't file, there's no modification or no counterclaim filed. So everything goes away. So that means that, he can have her 100% of the time and you have no rights. Well, that's not fair. That's the reason why we're here. That's the reason why we're fighting. So sometimes I have to put it in that perspective. And obviously, that's a case where there's nothing pending before. But sometimes that's exactly what it is. Because again, you need to understand. I mean, I have a client right now. We have two children. One, he's on the birth certificate. The other one, he's not on the birth certificate. And I go, if you dismiss both of these cases, one, he has equal rights. The other one, he doesn't have rights on. So you understand he can take them from school if we dismiss this without any ramifications. What? Oh, maybe I should continue it a little bit further. Maybe you should.
You probably see this a lot, and I know this is a little different than what we're talking about, but a little on the same vein. When somebody is very nervous and doesn't like conflict, I mean, going to court can be so stressful for most people because they're so passionate about a situation. But I mean, do you have any advice for people that go into court trying to like get through it and get good results without fainting or or yelling at somebody or showing like some people you can just read every emotion on their face and that can be very bad when you're in front of the judge.
I'm going to tell you number one, you go with a lawyer. If you are that person, you go with an attorney because they're going to be your mouthpiece. And it's so much easier for you to just stand there. Just stand there. My whole thing is just stand there and look pretty. All you got to do is say your name. Other than that, you look pretty. And it puts you in a different mindset of, oh, look, I really can just breathe. It takes that anxiety away because again, all you have to say is your name. That's easy to do. Like people don't care about that. It's oh my god. Well, what if the judge asks me a question? Well, the judge is probably going to ask me the question, and I can address it. If the judge asks you a specific question, then you're going to answer it. If you don't understand the question, we'll have a conversation, and then we'll talk to the judge about it. But I think it's that dynamic of if you're not that person that deals with conflict at all, have your attorney by your side, let them be your mouthpiece, and you just stand there and look pretty.
And that saves you. It absolutely saves you. Yes, it is still hard to sit there and not say anything while the other side is saying a bunch of bad things about you, probably. Even if there's nothing bad, sometimes, the stuff they come up with is amazing. It's really hard. It's so awesome to have an attorney that can help you handle that and help you get better results. Because I can tell you, we've seen people in court just completely act inappropriately and it just ruined their case. And they might be rolling their eyes, they might be finger waving. We saw that. Judge does not like that, doesn't like the head bob, doesn't like the dirty looks, doesn't like yelling. They'll kick you out if it gets really bad.
Absolutely. And I think, it's always one of those things that I always go like this and put my hand on your hand, put my hand on your shoulder. It's just, I got this. Just breathe. I got this. I have a time and place that I get to talk. Just don't let it get to you. and I get my turn. And, that's really kind of the tone that I have with clients because, yeah, I get it. You're getting worked up. You can sit there and shake your head and you roll your eyes, but again, all those things are impacting the judge. So, again, when I kind of do that, it's like, oh, yep, I realize I'm doing something wrong. I'm just doing it to go, just chill. Just chill. I'm here.
Well, it's nice to have you on our side. That is for sure. Thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a really interesting topic, and I think one that a lot of people can relate to. As frustrating as people not following the rules is, we've got things that can help get your case back on track, and you, Nicole, can make it all happen the right way. But I guess there's actually one question I didn't ask, and it's just, and I know this probably varies, but is there a certain time frame that some of these consequences will take um, for some of the subjects that we talked about earlier? If somebody's getting punished for not getting documents in, they get a time frame. If someone had to pay their child support, there's a time frame. Like, what are some of the time frames?
So the time frames in other courts are going to be based off of statute of limitations. So that's going to be governed by the particular case. In family court, if there's a timeline that's given by the judge that says it is due within 30 days or whatever the case may be, generally they're going to have a hearing after that 30 days where you can bring it up again and go, they didn't do this, this, and this. They will have a review hearing. So it's a review of the contempt to deal with the contempt. And so you can kind of roll that over until that issue is resolved. If it's just producing documents, then again, at my point, if I've already did a motion to compel, then my option is a motion for sanctions or a motion to eliminate. So I certainly have different avenues. When can you file a contempt is really at any point in time that the breach occurred, so long as it's still ongoing or that there was a duration. Can you say, well, we miss Sally's Christmas for the last 5 years and she's 25? Well, great, who cares? No, because she's emancipated and she's an adult. But that's going to be more specific. But if I say, hey, for 5 years of Sally's life, we had a court order for you to pay child support and you didn't pay child support, certainly you can bring that court contempt back when she's 25. So it really kind of depends on what specifically was the issue that wasn't addressed and where the parties are today.
Well, that does it. Thank you so much, Nicole. It's great information. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week where we can tackle another serious issue in family court.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Have a great weekend, everyone, and thanks for watching.